However,
for your
yep.
okay.
Cut it out.
They were
So I do need to meet
talking with their hands.
so that we can figure out.
Oh, weren't they?
I also want to talk about next.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Select Board's meeting to order. The meeting for Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. And if you'd join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will start with public comments.
Good evening. Thank you. Patrick Otten, East Harwich. Link just gave me an update, but the reason why I'm here is you know about the Vulnerable Road Users Law that was passed April 1st in Massachusetts. It's a law saying if you're a pedestrian, a walker, a cyclist, anyone not operating a vehicle, if you're being passed by a vehicle, you must have 4 feet of space. Okay, that's the law. You can't zoom by anymore. You must have 4 feet of space. So I went to the police station this morning and talked to Officer Ron Ruggio, and he didn't know about it, but he suggested, yes, we need signage. At which point I said, I better come to the select board and ask your opinions on it. But Link's given me an update, say there's 50 signs coming, just to reinforce the idea of safe passage for vulnerable road users. And the idea came up, we always see those signs about not texting, hands on the wheel. They're prevalent. So I'd like to see the same effort made for Harwich, for the vulnerable road users, okay? And have safety first in mind, okay?
Thank you, Patrick, and that was news to me, so appreciate you bringing it forward.
Maybe Link can make a comment and update us all.
If he'd like.
Thanks, Link.
Wayne Cooper, DPW Director. Yes, the board executed an agreement with Mass DOT to provide these signs. We worked in concert with both the Traffic Safety Division of the PD, with our bike committee and our town administrator. We developed a list. All the paperwork went through. We have signed the contract, or you signed the contract, waiting for delivery of the signs.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's fast.
Good service. Now it's your turn, Carolyn.
Thank you. Hi, Carolyn Carey, Community Center Director, and just some updates. Tomorrow, September 6th at 5 p.m., we'll be having our Exploring Addiction, which we have a panel of guests coming in to talk about the opioid addiction. It's a free event, and we hope people will join us at the Community Center. On September 12th at 6 p.m., we have the Sound Dunes putting on a free concert in the multipurpose room with refreshments. You do not need to sign up for tickets, just show up. Good time had by all. On September 14th, we have a writer who's coming in, Mike Bernard. He has published 5 books. 3 of them have gotten screenplay, yes.
Treatment.
Yes, thank you. And he will be talking about starting to write after the age of 50. He'll be raffling off his books, another free event. And then on Friday night, so that's September 14th at 5 p.m. On September 15th, we will be doing a movie. That is the start of Cranberry Festival. So we're going to start it off with the family, and we're going to invite people to come in for movie and pizza. We do ask if people will call to sign up because we want to make sure we have enough pizza to feed everyone, but that will be inside the multipurpose room on September 15th. And then September 16th and 17th, wait a minute, I'm tired already. We will be doing from 10 to 2 handprints that we'll be putting in our game room at the community center because everyone has a hand in making the community center a success. So we'll be doing those programs, and we invite you to attend. They're all free, And any of this information can be found on the town's website, and certainly in our newsletter, which is at the community center. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Harwich Chamber. I always love following Carolyn, especially in the fall, because we all have so much fun stuff coming up. A couple of things, and actually these are things for the rec, but the Chamber's been a part of. This Friday starts the Cape Cod Senior Softball Classic here in Harwich and Yarmouth. We coordinated with Yarmouth Chamber 900 welcome bags to give to both the Harwich teams and the Yarmouth teams that are playing in the Classic. Thanks to TD Bank for that. And the first game starts at 8:30, and for anyone that wants some comic relief, I will be throwing out the first pitch. I have practiced. If anyone follows our Facebook page, I did share a picture of where I was last Sunday after we closed. And then next, on Saturday the 9th, which I'm sure Fred will go over, but is the annual beach day, and that takes part at Red River Beach 11 to 3. Then also new this year for Harwich, but it is the 6th annual Roar motorcycle ride. This is an annual fundraising motorcycle ride, which will start in Falmouth. It's 50 miles, and it will end in Harwich at the Cape Cod Tech. This is a ride for opioid addiction recovery, so please come out and support that. Again, they will be ending in Harwich up at the Tech. On September 13th, we are hosting, along with Mass Hire, a job fair at the community center. Right now, we have over 20 employers. If anyone is still looking for employees, please let me know and we'll get you a table. And then, as Carolyn said, next Saturday and Sunday, and Fred will go into more detail, is the Harwich Cranberry Festival. 9 to 4 is the Crafters, 1 to 7:30 is the Cran Jam, and then, of course, it will be a very nice night for fireworks put on by the Harwich Chamber, as well as all of our great sponsors. Harwich Paint and Decorating, Chatham Paint and Hardware, Missouri's 137 Shell, Hinckley's, Terry's TV and Appliance, JFF Design, and, of course, Harwich Cranberry Festival. That's all for tonight.
That's plenty. Thank you very much.
Just a few things. You're welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Select Board. My name is Fred Monday. I'm the president of Cranberry Festival. I'm here tonight with my wife and also Kathy Kirch, which is our show director, and we have a pretty busy couple of weeks coming up. I'd like to go over a couple of things, if I could, with you on Beach Day, because we're going to have tug of war, all the games that we do with the kids. There'll also be sandcastle building competition there, cornhole, shell painting, and also temporary tattoos as well. Along with that, we're going to have a toucher truck, and a thank you to Link with the DPW. He's going to provide trucks, as well as Adam, with our Lieutenant Adam, with our police department. He's going to organize our fire department and also police details. Also, we're going to have the veterans food truck there. He also supports us in our Cram Jam as well. And we'll have the ice cream truck, Good Times, as we all know her as well. And we also have a bake sale tent that the women of the Cranberry Festival put together. So if you can come by and spread the wealth. And then the following weekend, of course, is a big show, which is Saturday and Sunday, 16th and the 17th. And like Cindy said, it's 9 to 4. On Saturday, some of the crafters do stay open until the fireworks start. It's totally up to them, but some of them do. And then again on Sunday, it will be 9 to 4 also. Right now, Kathy, which is show director, she has put together about 180 vendors, and this year we have quite a waiting list. So, you know, she's held it down for us, because we know that after a period of time you start overlapping and people get, it just gets too big. And then also on top of that, we have roughly 20 nonprofits on top of that. So there's about 200 tents will be out there. And I'm happy to announce this year, working with Carolyn, thank you, that we're going to have, I've been trying to do this for a number of years, but I've asked Alan Hall to set up in the gymnasium. And of course, Alan's been the 6th generation cranberry grower in town. So he's putting together a display for us, and it's going to be for both days in the gymnasium. And hopefully he has some cranberries, but he did warn me that it's still early in the year, you know, to have the cranberries. He said there may be some of the black ones around, so he may be able to get some of those. But I'm very happy to announce that. Then we will move into the music end of it. I have to thank Bob Weiser, and Bob Weiser did a heck of a job for us at the 204 this year. Matter of fact, the last show last Friday was sold out. There was, I don't know how many people outside waiting to get in. They were hoping people wouldn't show that had advance tickets. But, you know, we had a lot of people show up, and he did real well. And he's also put together for Saturday 6 bands and 2 more bands on Sunday. And then we have, of course, our beer tent and wine tent. This year, like last year, we did have a raffle tent. It was from the vendors, all the different raffles. This year, we changed and we went to gift certificates. With our committee, Pat, and her committee, she ended up going around between Harwich and Chatham and coming up with almost $5,000 worth of gift certificates.
Nice.
So there again, they'll be on display. Some of them are pretty nice gift certificates, $450, $500 gift certificates from some of these local people that really out and supported us. And we were really surprised, but when we got a lot of feedback, because it's the first time we really went out and campaigned for monies, if you wish, gift certificates, that people would come back. And a perfect example of that, if I may, was one of the, I don't know if I can use his name, but a local fellow right here in Harwich Center, which owns 2 stores. We went in and asked for a gift certificate, and he says, no, normally I do not do gift certificates. He says, but, you know, for the Cranberry Harwich Festival, for what they do for my business when it's in town, along with what you do, you know, for the kids, he says, I'll write you a check and to go to the Cranberry Festival strictly for scholarships. And then he said, I'm going to walk you next door to my second store, and did the same thing.
Wow.
So I guess that speaks very, very loudly. And of course, speaking of scholarships, and that's what my wife heads up, and we try very hard on choosing different scholarships and who they go to. And last year, it was over $20,000 worth of just scholarships there alone. That night that we did, I think it was the first night in June, that myself and the 2 Kathys were invited to give the certificates out. And I guess that's the reward of everything. You work so hard all year long, and then to sit there and shake the hand, and then somebody come back 2 or 3 years later and really thanks you. That's worth it. But in our tent that we have, we also have a listing of all the people that we give to during the course of the last 2 years. This list is, and all the different organizations in town, and also to the tech school. So hopefully you'll stop by and see us. And I know it's, you know, I want to thank the people of Harwich for putting up with us and the traffic. It's very hard, but we also appreciate it when they come out and they support us and have a great time. That's what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The last time we had a pretty significant update was a few years ago when Ed McManus was concerned about the continuation of the Cranberry Festival because of a lack of volunteers. And I would just like to commend you and the rest of your team for all that you've done to bring it up to a new level. Thank you from all of us.
Good evening, I'm Ginny Hewitt from the library. I know you've heard a long list of all the great things happening in town, and I have a few more. What a great town we live in. I wanted to say, with the school year starting, I wanted to come highlight some of the things that we're doing for children and youth during the fall. And the library's always been a safe and welcoming destination for students after school. And those hours after school, if they're home alone, that's when they're most at risk. So we have 3 new programs this year. Magic the Gathering Club will be held on Tuesday afternoons, a food and fun program on Thursday afternoons, and that's a series that just started this summer, so Ann thought she would keep it going over the school year. The kids get to make some treats and then play some games and do crafts while they have their snack. And then we have a junior librarians program that will meet once a month on Saturdays. They'll get to help plan and prepare for the big programs that we do, like a stuffed animal sleepover and a sheet fortnight and things like that. So what I wanted to let people know too is that youngsters age 10 and above are welcome to come to the library without an adult. If they're students at Monomoy Regional Middle School, they can take the bus to the library after school. We were really concerned when the middle school, with regionalization, that we would lose that, because before that the kids walked over. And they provided a special bus that went to the libraries and the community centers in both towns. And so that was excellent. We'd get, up to 30 kids a day getting off. Then last year they were unable to offer that not because of finances, I believe it was just lack of drivers. So, but students can still take the bus. They'll tell the parents which, bus they need to take. So they can come whether they want to come to the programs or not. They can come and do homework, just play games, just, explore some interests while they socialize with friends. And it's great because they're there. We're open until 7, Monday through Thursday night. So on weeknights, parents can come and pick their kids up on the way home from school. And we also want parents to know that while the children aren't in our custodial care, the middle schoolers are just getting used to being out without parents, so they think that they're in our custodial care. And we also would like the parents to talk to our youth services librarian and help make a plan for helping your child make this transition, so that they will be safe and that they know who to come to if they have any issues. It's worked out well. I've been here for 24 years, and we've always had a lot of kids after school and never had any issues. I also wanted to mention for elementary school, now they do have to come with a parent. We're having a special Lego free day program on Wednesday afternoons. Starting time will vary. It depends on when the kids get out of school, and every other Wednesday is an early release day. So right after school, the families can head over and play with our billions of Legos. We're continuing 2 programs we have for homeschool children this fall. One's an activity club on Friday mornings, where they'll do STEM challenges and art projects and things like that, and that's Fridays at 10:30. And Tuesdays at 1 p.m., we're putting together a Destination Imagination team for homeschool students. For young children, it's not after school, but just want to make sure people don't think, because I don't mention it, we're not doing it. On Tuesdays, story time's at 10:30. On Thursdays, it's outside at Brooks Park at 10:30, weather permitting, inside if in bad weather. And beginning next week, our preschool projects program will return on Wednesday mornings at 10:30. And finally, I just want to mention one new program for adults. We have a new creative writing series starting, and Clark Tucker's leading that. And it's going to be 10 weeks starting September 14th on Thursdays from 6 to 8. And so this is open to all writers, whether they're experienced or just people who thought about it but don't know how to get started. And so participants will write from a prompt. This is actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, it's called Pen, Pad, and Prompt. It's not a traditional writers group where people come and share their works, and sometimes that gets a little dicey over who gets more attention, and sometimes the criticism's a little too harsh. So this method is people will write from a prompt for up to 4 or 5 minutes, and then they can share what they want. And so it's more about the craft of learning how to write and getting to experience and be a little more creative and able to put your thoughts down on paper. So there's no charge to participate in that, but people can sign up on our website or just come into the library and let us know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. You know, I moved here 18 years ago, and people in New Hampshire said, so what do you think you'll do down there in the off-season? And there's more to do here than anywhere I've ever lived. So thank you to all of you, Carolyn and Cindy and Jenny, for keeping us active. Emily.
Good evening, Emily Mitchell, Town Clerk, and to round out the month of September, I'm excited to share that our office, along with the Town Administrator's Office, is bringing back Janelle Austin of KP Law to provide another session or series of sessions for open meeting law trainings. So we have 2 sessions that are both scheduled for Thursday, September 28th. They'll both take place at the Harwich Community Center in the multipurpose room. The first session is from 2 to 4, and the second is from 5 to 7. We wanted to make sure folks had some evening options and afternoon options, so whatever fits your schedule best. We certainly encourage everyone to attend. It is open to all members of Town of Harwich boards, committees, and commissions, along with staff, especially staff members who work closely with committees, which we know is many. The sessions will cover essentials like posting proper notice anytime you intend to deliberate on a subject, proper minutes. So the essentials, and I think one of my favorite parts of these trainings is that Janelle is always willing to answer committee questions. So we know oftentimes folks' questions are very fact-specific and committee-specific, and she can provide more insight than anyone else I know. So we're very excited. We're happy to have her. We are asking folks to register in advance just so we have enough materials and chairs for everyone. The flyer is in the select board packet this evening, as well as on the homepage of the town website. So you're welcome to register by phone, email, or to stop by. If anyone has any questions.
Is there any outreach to committees other than this to get people to go?
To get people to go to the training?
Yes.
So we do have the information on our town clerk department page and on the homepage of the website. It did go out as an alert for anyone who is subscribed. I think a few of our town social media pages have shared it. I'd love if you are willing to spread the word to committees you are the liaison to. If you have any ideas, I'm happy to spread the word more broadly.
You nailed mine. I think it's important that the board reaches out as a liaison to each committee that they're involved in and encourage people to go.
Right. We've seen that even though we all think we know what it is, there's always a different twist, and I certainly plan on going again because I learned something this afternoon when Jeff called me. So as Michael, I encourage any committee chairs and even committee members. It's 2 hours and it's well worth it.
Agreed. Thank you.
Are you going to give me a little bit more on tonight's agenda?
I know you have some agenda items this evening that impact upon other committees.
Yes.
I would just advise that if any committees have a quorum of members in the room, if they have not posted an agenda indicating that they will be joining you in your discussion this evening, I would advise that they hold off discussing until a future meeting where they have properly posted, either on their own as the committee or if you are entertaining another joint meeting in the future. But that if they have not given proper notice, I would advise against speaking to the topic this evening.
Thank you, and I knew you would say that much better than I. Jeff?
Emily, I would just like to say thank you. You're such an incredible resource. You deliver information when we have questions with a smile and the most wonderful attitude that anyone could ask for when they go to somebody with a question. And I just wanted to publicly myself say thank you for our conversation today, and we couldn't do it without you.
Thank you. That means a lot, and I hope anyone who has questions never hesitates to reach out. I enjoy being a resource for folks.
Well, you are, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Any more public comments?
Madam Chair, just one from the
Yes.
table. If anyone's been traveling on Bank Street, you may have noticed the grade construction program going on at the old fire station. You may have also noticed the sign next to it indicating that the trails, the Harwich Conservation Trust trails at Colebrook are closed. That is related to their ecological restoration project, and we were given word that they may be closed for up to a year. As much as that's disappointing, it's going to be, I think, phenomenal when they're done, but wanted to give notice that the trails are now closed and are expected to be closed through next August.
Great, thank you. Anyone else, or shall we move on to the consent agenda? Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we accept the resignation of Eric Levy, Bikeways Committee, effective immediately. I move that we approve David Nixon to the Recreation and Youth Commission representative to Committee Preservation Committee, term to expire June 30th, 2026, as approved by the Recreation and Youth Commission. I move that we approve Robert Doan to be the Historic District and Historical Commission representative to the Community Preservation Committee, term to expire June 30, 2026, as approved by the Historic District and the Historical Commission. I also move to affirm Don Yanuzzi Jr. as the Shellfish Constable, term to expire 6/30/2024 per Town of Harwich Charter Chapter 3, Section 6(3)-6-1. I move to affirm the appointment of Amy Jalbert to the Voter Information Committee, term to expire 6/30/25, as recommended by the Select Board Interview Committee. I move to accept a donation for after-school and summer programs in the amount of $1,000 from the Chatham Harwich Newcomers Club, Incorporated. And I also move to approve Select Board meeting minutes of August 21st, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
4-0, Joe? New business, the first is discussion on the disposal area regulations as it relates to the treasure chest operation. Votes may be taken. Do you want to start this, Jeff?
I will, Madam Chair, and thank you. I would like to make sure that we understand this is specific to the treasure chest rules and regulations, not so much the disposal area regulations. I would also like to provide a narrative so that everybody here and at home and the public understands what we're talking about. And lastly, I would also like to make sure that that everybody understands that I will not be using names, specific names, out of respect for all parties. So I'll begin with saying that back in April, on the 22nd of 2023, there was an incident at the treasure chest where a patron, customer, as they call them, was being disruptive and throwing donated items at some of the volunteers who were working in that afternoon shift. The same customer showed up the following morning during operations, allegedly, and continued to be disruptive, throwing donated items at some of the volunteers who were working on the morning shift. Items thrown at volunteers included a pickaxe and a shovel, amongst some other things, allegedly. Some of the treasure chest volunteers feel that this customer is continually harassing and threatening them. Some of the committee volunteers would like to see this customer banned from the treasure chest so these actions will stop. At that point, Link and Ellie, who is the committee chair, devised a strategy whereby that customer specifically would be allowed to come to the treasure chest and shop only when Ellie was on duty. I understand the customer apologized to Ellie for his behavior on April 22nd and 23rd and agreed to the proposal. The chair then conveyed the plan to the treasure chest volunteers and put the customer harassment item on an agenda for a May 11th, 2023 meeting. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, the committee could not get to that agenda item on May 11th, and it was rescheduled as an agenda item for the next meeting. Fast forward to when I became the liaison of this committee, and this meeting took place on August 17th of 2023 when I was present. Several committee members voiced their continued concern that this customer could not be trusted to behave, and that having Ellie provided special supervision to one customer who couldn't stay within the lanes was not a good resolution to eliminating the threat of harassment felt by multiple committee members and volunteers. At that point, I suggested that the committee formalize this by making a motion. A motion that would then create a recommendation to the select board. And there was a motion to remove this patron from allowing him to access the treasure chest. There was a motion made. There was a second, there was discussion, and the vote was made, and the vote carried, essentially, that there would then be a recommendation made to the select board, by way of me, the liaison, to petition the select board to discuss the vote to remove, which I believe, if I'm correct, was a 6-to-1 vote. Don't hold me to that, but it was an overwhelming majority. And I think there was only one person who voted no. So here we are. It has made it to me as the liaison, and now it has made it to the select board. And I will stop my narrative there, Madam Chair, and turn it over to you and answer any other questions that any of the board members may have.
Okay, anyone else care to comment? Michael?
Thank you, Jeff, and thanks for bringing this forward. I don't believe it belongs here. Clearly, this is a police department issue. It's an alleged event, and I don't recall in my 9 years, I believe, removing anybody from anything besides a committee, but no member of the public ever. And Jeff pointed out this was specific to the treasure chest rules. There aren't any. You can't take stuff from the treasure chest and sell it. That's pretty much the extent of the rules. There is nothing about behavior in there whatsoever, which leads me back to where I was a year and a half ago. We're asking volunteers to basically run a business and police it. And in the DPW regulations, it does outline that the disposal area supervisor is to be contacted if there's any trouble, which it sounds like happened. So I guess my question would be, why at that point, if the disposal area supervisor got in the middle of it, why the police weren't called if a pickaxe was thrown? And then how we're gonna move forward on new rules and a charge. And the only other incident that we've had this year, thankfully, is somebody didn't want to put their sticker on the back of their car, which I believe was met with a letter from the town administrator.
Right.
Not that I have a problem removing people, we just don't do it. We only do it from our committees. So I don't know why we would start that tonight. And again, I can only use the word alleged because the person that's involved hasn't been questioned by anyone on any official level in the town, nor was anything reported by the disposal area supervisor. So, nor does the agenda item give anyone any inkling of what we're about to do or consider doing, which is, as the clerk talked earlier about, an open meeting law violation that we'd be setting ourselves up for. So I don't believe we should take any action whatsoever. I know Jeff, through an email, is working on a charge. I might suggest that he work on some new rules. But we should take up the structure and what we're asking volunteers and a part-time committee to do, and not be taking an action tonight. Because of the severity of this, I would ask that the town administrator, or even Jeff, as the liaison, contact the police chief tomorrow, maybe with Ellie, and give some dates and some names so that they can follow up on it. But other than doing just that, I don't see why we would do anything else.
Joe, would you like to comment on that, or should we have Link, since he is here in the room?
So the last part I heard, I think is where I would pick it up from. There's an alleged incident to have occurred earlier this year, and I would agree with Board Member McCaskill that police should be notified. Beyond that, I think the reason why the two documents are in your packet is that's all we could find that relate to the treasure chest as it relates to that general area. and I think Board Member McCaskill has covered it. If you have regulations, that's the extent of it. What I can rely upon in the regulations is to, as was said earlier, is to some of the scofflaws on not putting their sticker on or refusing that. That's a pretty simple schedule that we can use, and it's gonna become more expensive for the offender. But to this situation described tonight, and again, everyone has said the right words, alleged actions, but it requires police intervention, in my opinion.
All right,
So,
Julie?
thank you. I think I agree with Michael, I agree with Joe, and I think when you're working on your charge, you know, we should think about the fact that those people shouldn't go through that, the volunteers, and that really it's sort of a one and done. If somebody's throwing things at staff, you know, it should be, that happens once and that person's removed. Because we can't do it tonight, especially based on the agenda item, and to Michael's point that we don't normally do that, and it is a police issue, but I definitely think that that should not be tolerated more than once, and that person should be removed.
In a police car. Sorry,
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
right.
Jeff?
Thank you. And I first want to say, and go on the record, that these volunteers do a heck of a job. And the safety of the volunteers and everybody else who's at the treasure chest, partaking in the treasure chest business, is paramount to me, and I would assume it is to everybody sitting at this table. I don't want to speak for all of you. I don't know why the police hadn't been called. I asked that question, and they all kind of agreed, shook their head like, okay. And I get it. It's a tough decision to make, to call the police. And I respect every one of them for putting up with it for so long, the alleged person who allegedly has done these things. I think, for me, I want to provide some level of comfort and safety to the volunteers of the treasure chest who now have to go back to work on Saturday and Sunday of this week. And if said person shows back up, I think they would all be uneasy, especially now that it's come to this. So I will personally tomorrow reach out to the chief of police with Ellie and state the narrative. But unfortunately from there, it's out of my hands, and it will be in the hands of the chair and the treasure chest committee to discuss the happenings with the chief. I will finish by saying that, to your point, Julie, I have already, it's kind of interesting how this all has played out. As I'm writing the charge, the new charge, and working on the new charge to be looked at by the select board here, this was happening at the same time. And as I'm reading the charge there, in their packet, there's a lot to do with volunteer rules of etiquette, but nothing to do with the public's rules of etiquette. And the last thing I want is for Treasure Chest to be the Wild Wild West. I mean, we don't need that. We don't need that at all. It's a great place, and people go there, and they're happy, and they're smiling, and then there goes a pickaxe. So, at the end of the day, and I'm not making light of it. I am not making light of it. That is, I can't believe it. Anyway, I will go on record by saying tomorrow, I will make that call to the chief, and then I will turn it over to the chair, and then from there, it's a burden that's going to be placed on the committee to follow through. And again, as the liaison, I'm there to help, be a part of it, and counsel to the best I can. So, thank you all for listening to the narrative and weighing in. I appreciate your...
Would you also advise the treasure chest chair and have her advise the volunteers that if there's any type of activity at that level, that should be an immediate call to 911?
So that was, I believe, my first sentence out of my mouth.
Okay.
Was, at that meeting on August 17th, was safety is paramount.
Yeah.
And anything that rises to the level that makes any volunteer feel uncomfortable call 911.
Right.
It is not the volunteer's responsibility. It is not anyone's responsibility to try to be a bouncer at the treasure chest. So I don't want to see anybody in there getting hurt, whether it's a volunteer or a patron. That's not a good look, and I can't stand for it, so.
Okay. Anything else? Michael?
It would be fair to say to the chief that it was the consensus of the whole board to do this immediately, given that they're going back to work on Saturday and there is some fear. But if he could make contact sooner rather than later.
That would be great.
Absolutely.
If I
Joe?
could, just
Yes.
on the overall matter, I'll work with the director, we'll work with the team over at the disposal area. There still should be the opportunity for volunteers to communicate with town employees while they're there if they're in need of anything. So we can make sure that they have equipment, we can make sure that the person they deem in charge is aware of who's on duty at the disposal immediately, so that any other items other than of a potential criminal nature, which, and if I can speak on behalf of our chiefs, they tell us all the time, don't hesitate, call 911, that's what it's there for. But we can also make sure they have strong support from staff in that area and communication devices.
Fantastic.
Great, thank you. We all set with that one? Okay. Next is an update from a member of the local
Thank you, Cindy.
planning committee. So we'll take a brief pause while Cindy collects.
We take a motion on C in the
Oh,
meantime?
sure.
Sure.
You want to do
I
C?
move, sorry, may I?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to vote to appoint Dinah Lane, did I say that right?
Correct.
Dinah Lane, as the Town of Harwich representative to the Cape Media Board of Directors, term to expire 12/31/2025.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0, Joe?
I move to vote to remove Cameron Smith from the Waterways Committee due to lack of attendance, and I also move to vote Andrew Dockin from the Bikeways Committee due to lack of attendance.
Second.
Any questions?
Just that's items D and E.
That's
D and
D
E.
and E.
Thank you, Joe.
I would just like to comment for the public that these individuals were contacted multiple times and did not get back to us. In fact, one said, "No, I'm not going to send you a letter. You'll just have to let me go." So this was not easily done. It was properly done. Can I take a vote? Or do we already?
We have a second.
We have a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, Joe?
Thank you.
Okay. So we are now back to the local planning committee.
We're delighted to be here. Thank you for having us.
We're thrilled to have you. If you'd pull the microphone toward you, I'm told that people can't always hear, and maybe just move it back and
Sure.
forth, and if you'd both introduce yourselves, that'd be great.
Sure. I am Joyce McIntyre. I am the chair of the local planning committee.
I am Sharon Rooney, Principal Planner with Ty and Bond. We're your consultant for the local comprehensive plan and 2 other plans as well.
Great, thank you, and we're thrilled to have you here and get this update.
Wonderful. So thank you for having us. Our kind of format for this evening was we actually have 2 little slide presentations because I think people process information a little bit differently. Thank you to the tech support for helping us load that. The thought was that Sharon would kind of update you on the process overall, how that works, and then I was going to give the community perspective. So I think the slides will be behind us. So, okay, are you going to advance the slides for us?
I will, yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you, sir,
try to
very
man-
much. We
we'll try-
appreciate you.
Sorry, we'll be turned around a little bit here.
That's quite all right.
Or would it be better if we were over there?
Podium.
It might be easier, because
Might
then
be
you can
easier.
see it, and you've got a microphone closer to you.
Go ahead,
Yours is up there first, so.
Do you mind putting Sharon's first?
Is that a separate presentation?
It is. Just because it's more technical, that might make more sense cognitively first.
wire?
I didn't hear the question?
motion to just start on the first meeting first, and then I'll text my supervisor to see.
Sure, do you want to just give we maybe don't need the Sharon, if Sharon can. Sharon's such
Well,
a-
I can just give you a brief
Okay.
update. There is a PowerPoint, a very brief PowerPoint in your packet, I believe, right? But just again, Sharon Rooney, I'm principal planner with Ty and Bond, and we're assisting the town in the local comprehensive plan update, as well as the open space and recreation plan update and the housing production plan. The housing production plan is primarily being prepared by Karen Sunnerborg. She's our sub-consultant for that project. But the idea is that the three plans, the comprehensive plan as well as the other two plans, will be prepared simultaneously, so that the open space and recreation plan and the housing production plan update will help inform the goals and policies and actions of the comprehensive plan as well. So great timing to do all three at once. So we're your consultant for all three of those plan updates, and I'm serving as the project manager for the overall effort. So if there are questions that come up about timing or content along the way, I'm assisting the committee in their monthly meetings. This is our third meeting this evening, so been meeting monthly since July. And we've focused our early efforts on getting some early public outreach through some postcard. A very simple postcard with a few questions that I think Joyce is going to cover that in a little more detail.
Yep, he's getting your slides.
Oh, okay. All right.
Is that what that looked like?
No, no. It's okay. I'll just wing it.
We'll go back to mine. It's all right.
That's fine. So early efforts have included a very simple little postcard with 3 questions that have been distributed at various events. The committee's doing a great job on that. We've spent a little time, we've started to prepare an overall survey that'll be part of the comprehensive plan update. And tonight we were focusing our work on the survey questions and content for that, and the survey will most likely go out in probably later October, early November. So that'll be a general survey around vision and goals for the comprehensive plan. It does have a few questions specific to housing to address some of the Karen's needs for data that she will need for the housing production plan. So that's been another effort we've been doing, and provided the committee with some talking points as they're out in the community already at various events and scheduling more, which is great because we want to get a lot of public input on, especially on the community vision going forward, the community vision and goals going forward for the next 10 or more years. So I think I did have a slide in there probably about general schedule, but we are...
Presentation should be up.
Okay, now I can back up and start over. Okay.
That was a quiz to see if you knew what your slide says.
No, I didn't. All right. Well, I'll try not to be repetitive, but yes, if you could go ahead and advance the slide. So, yes, so the overall, we have several goals for the comprehensive plan update. It's to prepare a vision statement and growth policy, and an inventory and assessment of existing conditions that it will bring Harwich up to date with where is the town today in terms of existing conditions covering things like natural resources, infrastructure, community facilities, and so forth. Identify planning and land use goals going forward for the comprehensive plan. And a new element in here that is from the update to the Cape Cod Commission regulations is to prepare capital facilities and infrastructure plan. So that'll be a component of the plan. I mentioned the housing production plan update is a component. And very important, targeted action and implementation schedule for the plan, implementing the plan going forward. Our goal is to bring the draft and final comprehensive plan to town meeting for adoption. And then following that is the Cape Cod Commission certification. So the goal overall is to get that, the plan certified by the Cape Cod Commission as well.
And are you talking this upcoming town meeting?
It would be a year, over a year from now. It would be, I think we'd identified fall of next year, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Might be a little bit hard to see on this slide, but again, these are the different elements or components of the plan. Again, includes the vision statement and growth policy, goals, existing conditions and analysis. And then we prepare and integrate the other plans. So the housing production and the open space and recreation plan will be prepared and then also integrated into the overall comprehensive plan. The capital and facilities and infrastructure element and the action plan implementation schedule. Bring all that together into a draft, and then ultimately a final plan, again, goes to town meeting, and, then importantly, goes to town meeting first, and if adopted at town meeting, then it goes to the Cape Cod Commission after that for certification. We do assist along the way with communicating and bringing drafts of documents to the Cape Cod Commission staff for their review, so they're involved along the way, so it helps ensure that the plan is meeting their requirements as well as your requirements. So as I mentioned, we are, really our initial work has been on community engagement, coming up with a number of different strategies to engage the community in this effort. And as I mentioned, the postcards that are pictured up here, we're working on a survey. Again, hope to get that out later this fall. And other efforts, including committee members attending other workshops and meetings of other committees and boards along the way, which is very helpful in getting them interested in the plan process and engaged in the plan itself. These are just some illustrations. We are planning to have some fall visioning workshops. We'd love to have you attend, participate in those. They have not been formally scheduled yet, but we're looking at later this fall to kick those off. Could be up to 2 events focused on community vision. It'll be the first sort of big community event that we'll do this fall, and get people involved with activities, with Post-it notes and different activities involving maps that we'll prepare, and usually break out into different groups, asking people questions about what they value most about your community, what things they'd like to change. We hope to get that broadly advertised so we get a lot of participation, and those will be in person unless there's a desire to have sort of a virtual or option for virtual meetings. These are members of our team. These are not all of them, but in addition to myself as project manager, Brandy Nelson, who's the vice president, Ty and Bond, Karen Sonnerborg, I mentioned, who will be spearheading the housing production plan update, and then other staff. We have planners, landscape architects, and some graphic people that can help produce things like posters and boards for public visioning events, help with the survey, transportation issues. We've got a good team with us that focus on both the infrastructure side and the natural resources side. So we'll give you a complete plan process there. And that's it, very brief.
Great, thank you.
If we can ask,
Can we take a few questions first, Michael?
that'd be great, thank you. You mentioned postcards.
Yes.
Where
I'll
were
tell you all about it.
Thank you. And
I'll
then-
tell you in detail.
And then for the community meeting, you mentioned broadly advertised.
I'll tell you all about that too.
Okay. She's going to answer your question.
We're a team, Sharon and I. Go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Sharon, just a quick question for my own understanding.
Sure.
The housing production plan and the open space and recreation plan, along with the local comprehensive plan, do they all have to survive town meeting? Or is it just the local comprehensive plan that has to survive town meeting?
It's just the local comprehensive plan.
Okay,
That-
so does it make sense to have all 3 finish at the same time? Or do you maybe expect the other 2 to be live sooner than the local comprehensive plan?
The latter, so that the 2 will be prepared at least in a really solid draft form prior to the finishing the comprehensive plan, so that those plans can help inform the actions in particular that the comprehensive plan includes. So, it's good, it'll be good information that'll be specific to current open space and recreation needs and housing needs, and then those get folded in to the comprehensive plan. And I should say too that the housing production plan update is the other sort of new requirement for the Cape Cod Commission. In addition to the infrastructure plan, the housing production plan is now like a required element, if you will, but it's a summary of that plan that goes in the LCP.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask a question that Joyce couldn't answer.
Yeah,
No problem.
we're a team. Thank you for the advancement. So I am the committee chair, and I'll just give you a little update from the citizen, town resident perspective as well. So I'll tell you about our progress and where we're going next. You, the select board, appointed us, our committee of 11, actually a year ago. So we've been at this for a while, and it is a very thorough, rigorous process because it is the 10-year plan, right? It happens about every 10 years. So we convened our first meeting in September of 2022. What we did, we organized. And I think it's really important to say in this long-term process that's supposed to engage the whole community, we really committed to a respectful, open dialogue that embraces candor and discussion and really the best data available to us. And I think we are living up to that and continue to have, hold those values as a committee. And initially, we actually really educated ourselves. This is Sharon is the professional expert, but as a community member, there is a huge body of information around this, both in terms of what the plan is supposed to encompass and the Cape Cod Commission and really why and, from, physical space planning to more psychosocial community needs. We're also not reinventing the wheel. Every, town on the Cape has been through this, both Brewster and Truro fairly recently. And we really have embedded and really educated ourselves about what those plans look like. There's a whole trail of what that education has looked like as well. So there's a repository of information of everything that we've been through as a committee, and I think that's very important and something that's this thorough. So, we really recognize this is a unique time in Harwich history, really a convergence of economic forces that are unique, that are maybe changing right amidst us as well as environmental concerns in terms of time in society after a pandemic. So we are sort of mindful of what's going on in the community. And we talked about, there is a process for this in terms of transparency and revision, quantitative versus qualitative data, really diverse and broad engagement of the community from Mr. McCaskill, which I'll talk to you more about that. A lot of these values of a committee were then articulated in how we were able to engage Sharon. So the request for proposals in terms of what kind of consultant do we need that would be right for us, seeking experience in land use zoning, capital planning processes, and we really focused on a way to sort of innovatively and broadly engage all of our community members. So we identified stakeholders, and this is in no ranked order, but our committee is incredibly vibrant, a committee of 11, and I think very broadly engaged from the young to the old to sort of east to west, every sort of component of the community that we can think of, and a lot of local knowledge, I think, is our strength. These are the stakeholders listed here that we are creating a trail that we're engaging with broadly. So in the winter and spring of 2023, these are who we had come talk to us, representatives from the Cape Cod Commission, and everyone from Brianna Nickerson to Dan Pelletier, our water commissioner, Mike Locke, Amy Zalowski. We are participating in the community really as listeners, so the housing huddles and forums that are going on, representatives from the committee have been there, are listening, are recording that information, and there's an electronic trail of that as well, because that's part of the visioning process and the standard we're trying to meet. By advisement of our planner and the town administrator, we have made the decision that the housing production plan and the open space plan will be included in the LCP, and that's not minimal, that's a big deal. And then we've been engaging with Karen Sunerberg as well. because there's some data about the housing that has to be included in the plan. So summer 2023, we've really dug into the qualitative data. So there's a pop-up visioning card, both physically in the community and digitally, that asks 3 questions. What do you love most about Harwich? What concerns you most about the future of Harwich? What do you love most? What concerns you about the future of Harwich? These are open-ended questions. And then, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? It's a form. We've gotten close to 100 responses just digitally. The cards are still out in themselves. A huge shout out to the committee members who we're going to have a table at the Cranberry Harvest Festival. So we'll be there. There's a QR code. There's a link distributing, as well as for our less digitally inclined friends, an actual physical card and a box you can drop in it downstairs. And I'm going to actually spend a little time telling you some of those comments that we've gotten back, because I think it's very unique and important, and we want to hear from everybody. So that's the qualitative data. There we go. So what do you love most about Harwich? One way of looking at qualitative data is with a word cloud. And I think our town has it right in that they really rank people first, right? The people are the most important things. And some of else what's coming out of here is, what do I value? What I love most about Harwich is the community, the small town, our environment, our water, our walking, our ponds, our schools. There was a huge shout out to the public health nurse as well. What it feels like, what it means to live in Harwich. So that's a word cloud. What concerns you most about Harwich? This isn't surprising, but some data behind that. Housing, development, affordable, overdevelopment, nature, young families, businesses, issues that obviously you're very plugged into. Anything else you'd like to tell us? Here are some, I think, really important quotes to kind of hear. What do we love about Harwich? The beauty, the quality of life, passion of the residents, small town life, wild spaces, rural aspect of life, open spaces and beaches. It's a beautiful town. I've been here 40 years. People, small town caring feel. Again, the people community was over and over again, as well as water, space, housing. These are the themes that kind of keep coming up. I love this town. I so appreciate the community services, the town nurse. They're such an important in this community and help so many people. This is someone talking about when I bought my house in Harwich, we moved here, both the area of like space, historical significance, but also the efforts in the community to support one another. And they specifically mentioned the family pantry and the treasure chest. Bottom line is people. Concerns, that are expressed. Housing for young families, not necessarily low income, just an affordable, regular sized house for a family. Finding the proper balance between appropriately planned development and keeping the small town charm that exists. So this is people are filling out these questions, telling us open-ended answers. Interesting, we hope you listen to us. So I have distributed this on social media. A lot of our town discussion is happening online these days, right? The Harwich Old Timers, I Love Harwich. I even posted it to the Harwich High School alumni page. And when you do this, you can see a spike in your response, right? This is relatively low tech for these days, but we're doing it. And there's a real effort. It's fascinating to me. Will you share the responses with us? Sure. Once we're done with it, for sure, this is anonymous data. I mean, this is like a record of community dialogue, which I think is incredibly important. And people have been very encouraging. I know sometimes, certain online spaces are like, wow, that's like really grim or really dark pretty quickly, and that has not been our experience as a committee reaching out like this. Keep up the good work. It's a constant struggle. Thank you for doing this. I'm happy to participate. Some people sign their names, which you don't have to. It's anonymous, but it's actually this, very hopeful and very encouraging of what a vibrant sort of resourceful town we live in. So just to kind of summarize the themes where we're going with this qualitative data, people. Our environment, which is very unique, water, and housing. So that's supported by what we've been getting back from the community. And really, it's an incredibly vibrant community committee. Why are we doing this? Because we're really hopeful for Harwich. This is my son's 7. This is a long-term plan for the town. So we're a committee full of optimists, but also really committed to having some thorough and potentially, I don't want to say controversial, but we're, engaging with the difficult issues that are facing the town. So we're mindful of collaboration and listening, but really the role of the committee is also to kind of distill this information and come up with a long-term plan. The quantitative survey that Sharon discussed, that will probably go out in November. It's very specific questions, kind of asking in a very specific way, kind of as we zoom in out of those three big questions. My ask for you is, to the town, is we really do need your support. We're going to be thrilled to meet our new town planner, but also we need some support, some basic tools in terms of engaging members of the community digitally, which we're going to get there, so we're excited about doing that as well. And really, the role of the committee is to kind of have the time and the space to think, and to think long-term about Harwich, and certainly, with your input and guidance and the other committees that are relevant in town, and as well as the voters in town. My goal is to also incorporate some of the best practices around these issues that are facing us: housing, water, people. That there is some best practices out there, and this is the space where we can talk about it and hopefully put it into our long-term plan. The ultimate goal is this plan is both useful and used, which is a big deal. Like, we can all sit as a committee of 11 and come up with the best plan ever, but if it's not useful to you and if it's not useful to the community, then we will have not succeeded. So we're out there a lot, and so far the response has been really good. Questions?
Before you leave that slide, your ask.
Yes.
Joe, can you help us with that? Do we have any status on a planner? And have you told Joe about the Nimble digital tools?
Joe is aware.
Okay.
Joe knows.
I am, and I reached out to you.
He's been
folks.
super helpful.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. I put them in touch with Sarah Eden on the digital tools.
Great.
There are some things we can use immediately with our present website. There's also some software applications we can acquire for them. For some of I think the phrase was Survey Monkey.
Yeah, I mean, there's different
We say
tools
ish
on that, yeah.
because we never use brand names
Right.
in procurement. So I believe those conversations should already be happening
Great.
with information technology. As it relates to the Director of Planning and Community Development, that's no one's ask more than mine. It is advertised, we have it on MMA, and we'd love if anybody else knows anybody to help us headhunt.
Oh, thank you.
One of the problems we find in some key positions, like planner, surveyor, engineer, is finding those technical people who are already on Cape. And that's the irony of dealing with this local comprehensive plan.
Right.
Because that's one of the problems we have to solve.
And I've been tremendously
Thank you.
appreciative of Joe's support, meeting this summer with Sharon and I, and I've been really encouraged by saying what a priority this is, so thank you.
My pleasure, my job.
Thanks, Joe.
I got question
Yes.
cards for you if you want, but no, go ahead.
I was just going to see if any other board members had questions. Julie?
Yeah, so you answered one of mine, which was how's the lack of a planner impacting you? So I understand, we're working on that. In terms of, I love the questions and some of the response. So far, and I know it hasn't been a lot of interaction, but when you're setting up a table, different places, how is the feedback? Is there interaction? Do you have to
I
drag
think I'll have more of an answer for you, physically about that, the Cranberry Festival. I steeled myself for going on the socials as it's been remarkably positive, engaged, candid, thorough, nuanced. I only, not that people aren't, there's some kind of things you kind of chuckle at, like, oh, that's your, but that person feels safe to say that in that space, and then it's separated out by response, and that's their big hot button issue, and then here's a very thorough response as well. So it's been very nuanced and kind.
Okay.
What social media site is that?
So there's kind of the two big groups, and anyone else can jump in, that I'm aware of that kind of is the virtual town square for Harwich going on right now, is on Facebook. And it's the Harwich Old Timers group and I Love Harwich. They're two separate groups that you can join. They're free. And
Thank you.
you learn everything.
So just to follow up on that,
More than you want to know, probably.
Right. It's just a space.
But you provide input to those two
Yeah, so
sites.
if you join, you can look at it, and it's Joyce McIntyre posted, "Hey Harwich," and there's a little information about the LPC and what our kind of goal is, and here's the link. Tell us what you think.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Julie?
so just to follow up on that, so I think it's so important to get the young people's feedback. And unfortunately, they're not on Facebook anymore, so I've learned. It's all Instagram, right? It's us older people on Facebook.
You know, and that's kind of why we're creating the record that, Sharon has really educated us, and Joe and our town planner. Like, there's a process for this visioning. And if you look at like Brewster, Yarmouth, Truro, like, there is a standard that we should be meeting about that we've touched as many people as possible. And that's why we really set up the very specific who are the stakeholders in Harwich. And that is a strength of ours as a community that we, I think, have our, together, our minds kind of have the expanse of Harwich and all its diversity. There's a record of all the visioning that we're doing. And, one thing we talked about in our committee tonight, that next on my to-do list is, today's the first day of school. So next week or 2 weeks, is to give this pop-up link, reach out to our superintendent, the principals in the school. I mean, there's all different demographics that we need to reach. So social media is only one piece of it.
Right, so, no, thank you, and I was going to mention the schools, because I think they're a great
Yeah,
resource.
and we are asking some demographic stuff of not like, do you live in Harwich? Do you work in Harwich? Are you a part-time resident? So we're breaking that out a little bit, and so far the answers have been about like 80-20, 80 full-time resident, 20% part-time resident.
And the housing production plan, I remember reading that a while ago. It really focused on density, and there's a lot of different good information in there. So I know you can't really answer this, completely, but do you see that having a lot of work, and does any of that, is that also vetted through the commission before you finalize it while you're working on the LCP?
It's vetted through the town, so.
Just the town?
It's not vetted through the commission, but it is a component of the comprehensive plan now, because, the commission also saw what a huge pressing need this is.
Right.
So that plan addresses specifically, capital A affordable housing. But the LCP can cover more broader housing issues beyond the, truly affordable housing need as well. So,
That's great.
Yeah, so it'll cover both.
That's a big gap.
So one of the things I'm really excited about the quantitative survey is, with Karen's help, there are some really high-level, very specific questions about housing that the nerd in me is kind of excited about that has never been formally asked of Harwich. And like the Yarmouth Comprehensive Plan is a good example of that, that we all know housing's important, it's really complicated, and some real data based on the community's response to these questions, like in terms of what is community priority. I mean, as good as the sample size is, of really drilling down on specifics around housing. So it kind of dawned on me, actually, for all the discussion, we've never really asked that as a community. So that should be coming soon, and we're more than happy to share that at all times, in real time.
That's great. I just want to emphasize, and I think, I can't speak for the board, but I do think, we have that other younger population, that we have children who have grown up here, who some are still here. The idea of them being able to stay here. And they're the ones that, have to keep things moving. So, we're engaging a lot with families with children through the schools and such. But we have this population that we all know a lot of, and they're sort of, I just find them in the shadows because, and this is why I brought up Instagram. They live their lives on, everything they do is TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat. Like, that's where they live. And I'm afraid that we're going to miss them. And I feel that they're a huge piece of the future of Harwich. So I just want to make sure we do whatever we can to bring them into the conversation.
This little QR code, you can just share widely. You can take a picture of it and text it to every
Great,
youth you know, and they can fill it out.
that's
So.
good.
Are you going to be giving us a few of those cards?
These are for you. Brian, our
Okay.
stalwart committee member, shared them with me. Thank you.
Great.
So-
Jeff?
Yeah, thank you, and Snapchat's not a thing anymore, Jim. Just bringing it up to speed.
The TikToks, yes.
Fantastic presentation, both of you. Thank you both for being here. Brian, thank you also
Yes,
for being here.
thank you.
Being an early part of your committee,
Yes.
I just feel so fortunate that we have you and the 10 others.
It's an amazing committee.
It
I'm
is
like such a
really-
fan of them.
Yeah, it is
Such a
really
good
an
group.
amazing committee. Thoughtful, purposeful,
Mm-hmm.
smart, truly digging down into the dirt for what's going to be in the best interest of Harwich long-term. And I hope everybody gets the feeling that you all think, you're thinking of everything. You're not just thinking about one or two or three subcategories of Harwich. You're really encompassing everything. And I remember back from my early days with you guys, the community outreach plan that we were just talking about, and now you're doing it. And I just I feel so fortunate that you all are driving this bus for our town. So thank you to
Thank
all
you.
of
And we're trying, and to everyone who's listening, if we're missing a piece of it, please reach out. I'm easily found, the committee members are easily found, and we'd love to hear from you, because we all have our blind spots. And so our intentions are really, really good, like I said, and very positive for the future. So if we're missing something, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
You know, everything you said tonight's framed in the positive.
Yes.
And other than Julie not knowing Snapchat, doesn't anymore, I think this has been a home run.
I get Snapchat all the time from my feed.
Thank you.
No, thank you for having us. We
Michael?
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you get your questions answered? You did. Okay.
But I love your enthusiasm.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having us.
You know, when we interviewed people for that committee, I was really struck by the caliber of people, the variety of experience, and just the passion around this subject. So it was very hopeful, and it's just inspirational to see this. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to coming back and visiting you again.
Anytime.
Giving Updates, okay.
Anytime.
Thank you.
I'll leave these for you.
Okay.
Hand them down.
What's up?
Yeah, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for being
Yeah.
here.
No, from a 30-year-old.
Okay.
Maybe
What's
you're
next?
Mary, you had one comment?
What? We have a comment?
You had one hand up in the public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss somebody? Certainly. Sorry, I didn't see that, Patrick. It's my bifocals.
Yeah, mine too as well. Thank you. I guess my question is more about the plan itself. How is it implemented? How does it function? Can you give me examples from past LCP plans that we can see today? What's the result? So I'd like to see how the plan comes down to earth and is implemented. How does all this work? Now that you have a plan, what happens?
Somebody want to take that?
I mean, we have actually we'll let the consultant, but Patrick, there is a current local comprehensive plan that you can go into the office and get. But this will come back to the board for feedback, I believe, and then it has to be passed by town meeting. Brewster's was never passed.
But just sort of physically, what's the end result? Can I go, oh, that's a result of the plan, look at that. Well, this wasn't, why not?
Patrick, you need to be at the mic.
So I'm just trying to understand the physical response of the plan. Where would I see today the results of a plan? Or where results didn't happen and need to have? Just break it down for me.
Sure, I'll give it a shot. So I do think that your current local comprehensive plan is on the town's website in terms of where does it live today. There is a document there that had, goals, had a vision statement, goals, actions, presumably in an implementation schedule. In terms of updating the plan, we'll be looking at that plan to see what actions were implemented, unless the town departments have done that already. In some cases, some towns go through that exercise and say, right? And reach out to different boards and committees and say, was this action completed? Was this? And so the actions that's really the kind of the meat of the plan. And usually the action plan will include responsible parties or who's going to take the lead. And that's usually a town department or committee or board that will take the lead in implementation of different actions. And the actions can take the form of things like zoning bylaw changes, further studies or reports that are needed to flesh out an issue more, or in public education. So it's not every action is going to be a zoning change. Some actions will be, educate the public around, recycling or solid waste or, whatever the issue is. So it usually will be in kind of one of those three buckets, if you will. And then it's the responsibility of the town and the various departments to carry out the actions of the plan and report that back to the Cape Cod Commission at various intervals. So it's been over a decade since the plan was completed. So it makes sense to take a new, fresh look at it because things have changed, conditions have changed, the demographics possibly have changed. So we'll update all of that. So you'll have a new look at where is Harwich today and where does the community want to go in the future. I hope that's a little bit helpful.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much. F, discuss the select board social media policy. Joe, did you want to start this?
Technically, I do. We have a plan, and we, of course, includes the town clerk. And I apologize, because what it really should refer to is the draft. So what you have in your packet and what Town Clerk Mitchell and I will speak to is whether the town wishes to adopt a social media policy. To jump ahead, both the town clerk and I see great value in such a policy. And I'll let Emily speak to a moment as to how this first came up from her purview. But our town clerk would be talking to you about this as it relates to boards, committees, and commissions. And I'll be talking to you as it relates to employees and staff. So what you have in front of you is a draft provided by council. And as was prearranged, I would like to turn it over to our town clerk.
Okay, thank you.
Well, with that segue, so for me, this potential discussion on a town-level social media policy did come from the deep dive on committees we've been undertaking over these last few weeks, maybe months at this point. It is something that many communities do have as kind of just an overarching guide. For me, I see it in two places, both for organization-created content. So for example, if a department or a committee had a social media page and put content out on behalf of the town, as well as individual users who use social media platforms. And for me, the two intersections that impact my purview most directly are public records and open meeting law. So for public records, any organization-created social media post content would fall under the category of a public record, so it's subject to retention, disclosure, those types of things under the Massachusetts Public Records Law, and subject to public records requests, and we see more and more of those each day where folks are looking for electronic and social media posts in response to their requests. So these items are subject to those policies and those requirements. And I think it would be beneficial to have those codified in a town-level policy. And then from the open meeting law side of things, if we're looking at individual users, I don't know if Joyce is still in the room, she teed me up beautifully. As she mentions, posting things on behalf of the local planning committee on social media pages, wonderful way to distribute information and solicit public feedback, but potentially veers into deliberation. Say her 5 committee friends wanted to comment on her post, sharing that survey. That could potentially be considered deliberation, or say they go discuss the results, we could be leading into serial deliberation. So these are things that are becoming or are already a part of our day-to-day lives as employees, committee members, residents, that I think could use more formal guidance so that folks are informed of their requirements under the law and can act in compliance with them with all the tools and resources they need. So as Joe mentioned, the draft policy that was included in your packet is the current draft used by KP Law. They were happy to share that with us. You'll notice some blanks that would be, subject to you to fill in if you do choose to move forward with a town-level social media policy. And I'll turn it back over to Joe now to maybe speak to those.
Before you do, can I just ask a question on that part?
Yeah.
Because we had that perfect example a few minutes ago of Joyce talking about posting on 2 sites that are not town sites. They're people or a business or whatever. So does that mean that the committee chairs really shouldn't post on a site like that?
I wouldn't offer an opinion that goes that far, I would say. I would just say that even a post on a non-Town of Harwich official page would still be considered a public record. If I'm going to just keep using Joyce, though I don't mean to single her out,
Right.
but where she just provided a salient example where she was creating a social media post as the chair of the local planning committee, so she was acting in her capacity as a member of a Town of Harwich public body. That would be a public record and subject to those things. And if fellow committee members opted to comment, share, opine about her post, again, even if it's not on a Town of Harwich page, would implicate the open meeting law.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Julie?
So this just raises a good point, and I was thinking this when Joyce was mentioning, how do we vet social media pages for committees? I mean, we don't really have a process, do we? I mean, I know it's kind of...
So if I can use the segue, for our purposes, this would be the first step. Because you're correct, we're technically dealing in a Wild West environment
Yeah.
without regulation. Not that I'm seeking to regulate per se, but the 2 salient points that I became aware of in conversations with our clerk as it relates, everything that Emily said as it relates to committees and open meeting law and all that, which will be covered later this month by our attorney, as social media relates to public discourse. But there's no way for us to track, there's no way for us to retain.
Right.
And so, you've heard me say many times that I consider myself to be the chief risk avoidance liability officer. We all are. And that's a major potential liability. We have social media policy, so-called social media interaction insurance, if you will, through Maya. And we'd rely upon Maya for some of the training that would have to go into this if the policy goes forward as essentially envisioned by KP Law's draft in your packet. And those would be the next steps that if you give us the green light to work through your policy on policies, which would be first hearing, second hearing, and then adoption, this would not be in any way constitute first hearing. I'm also imagining funds available in fiscal year '25 where we can have appropriate training so that staff and committee members are supported by appropriate training on how to be a moderator of your content, and also acquiring the software that we would need should any public record requests or worse lawsuit be filed. Then we're scrambling for I would hazard a guess, 20 or so sites that are connected to the town. So right now, it's daunting. The first way to get there is to have some form of a policy.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
I think it would hold everyone accountable too. Right now, I mean, it's just general public, but people can flat out lie on social media and attack people over and over and over again, and then the general public doesn't understand why the Board of Selectmen can't be on there to even defend itself.
Right.
So it's really turned into, especially in Harwich, the keyboard warriors say whatever they want, we can't reply to it.
Right.
So I think it would be great to hold our employees. We all get it, we're not on there. But to Emily's point, if there's a subject on Harwich Old Timers, and Julie comments and Mary comments, and I read it,
Right.
that is technically a violation of the open meeting law.
Right.
And the general public does not understand that.
Yeah.
They just want to, sit in their chair and throw bombs with their keyboard in their lap. So, I'm good.
Jeff? waking you up, Jeff?
No, there's a lot going, okay, so, for either one of you, thank you. Would this require everybody who falls under the umbrella that could potentially breach to have to sign a document for the ability for us to keep them, like, if a chair of a committee says, I'm not signing that document, I don't want to do it. What does that mean? And how does that play out? And how hard is it going to be? No, I'm for it. I'll state that. I am for it. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. How hard would it be to implement and track and police?
So from any of those, if I may, from any of those vantage points, I would say with a policy, it's simple. And the short answer would be yes. Anyone who is in a position to represent the town of Harwich, board, committee, commission member, elected official, appointed officials, staff, would be required to acknowledge, as they do with human resources policies, computer use policies, which are similar. That's how it would get rolled out. But again, for the purpose of protecting that agent of the town, so that if they do not create a bad act, because a bad act and a bad actor, there's no policy in the world that's going to save you. And the town would rely upon this if that were the case. But we're talking about somebody who has inadvertently led down a path, or right now is completely unaware, because you could say that we're not going to adopt a policy. All of the risks that we've identified still exist, and now they're worse because we're all aware that those risks are out there.
Right.
Yep.
So for me, policy endorsement and adherence is rather simple. The way we would distribute to employees is as we do with any other policy. First is upon hire. There's a whole stack that you have to go through. And for a policy where that's coming in new, we would attach it to the paycheck. We've done that before for any key matters. And then as our town clerk engages with committee members, this is something that they would be made aware of with their packet, as they already made aware of. Open meeting law, public records, ethics, because that's what this really gets to. If you read what KP Law provides, you can see all of the intersection points with any number of those areas. So operating without it is inviting negligence and disaster potentially. Working through the executive body to establish a comprehensive, but I think still clear policy, if that's what we build off of, is going to be better in the long run for everybody. Because again, when we reached out to the attorneys, we said, we need your help and we're going to develop a draft social media policy. And they said, sure, here it is. Okay. They've had it for more than 9 years. It's been tested in other communities. When you reach out to Maya, our insurer, they said, great, we would love you to have a policy. We have all these trainings that go with it. So we're catching up with the times, but the absence of it is far more damaging potentially for a number of reasons.
Thank you, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What did you say the timeline was to put this in play? I think I heard 2025 to put this?
So that would be fiscal year '25. So
Oh, sure.
what we'd be looking for first from tonight is a green light from you folks that we're on the right track. And what the town clerk and I would work towards is scheduling through your schedule a future first reading, hearing, and all that goes into your policy. This is something that we can build over the next 6 or 7 months. 245 days till annual town meeting. We're back to that. And if there's any fiscal component, we can tie it to town meeting. So this is a methodical approach, if I can say it that way, that could begin tonight, but will probably culminate closer to the fiscal year, which could be a good thing. We have new committee members coming in. We have the new budget, and we will always have what we intend, the town clerk and I. This is our second annual training on open meeting and all that. It is going to become annual every year, so we can incorporate it to everything else. So tonight, the ask is, are we on the right track? Shall we continue? And then I can work through the chair and you folks on your schedule, and the town clerk and I can start filling in the blanks and seeking input from interested parties.
Yes.
I think I hear consensus. One question, did one of you say there are currently 20 town sites?
So that was me stealing the homework of the town clerk. I will defer to the town clerk.
I did just a quick search limited to Facebook to see what Town of Harwich accounts come up with a quick search. So I think there are about 13 or 14 department pages, so departments that operate pages on behalf of their department, and at least 2 committees are running pages on behalf of their committee. So the organization is already putting out content espoused to be official on behalf of the Town of Harwich.
Wow,
So-
I had no idea.
Not to be cute, that was only to Facebook. We did not look at any other Instas or TikToks or anything else.
Don't look at Snapchat.
I didn't say Snapchat.
I think you have consensus to go ahead, and I'm glad that the two of you brought this forward.
Well, to that end, if I may, the kudos begin with our town clerk. As she mentioned, she became aware of this as she's been working on the training classes and really engaging with boards and committees. So I do want to thank our town clerk for spearheading this, but I'm 100% on board in the partnership.
Great,
Because it's for anyone that represents the town of Harwich.
thank you both.
So,
Jeff.
quick question, who takes the lead from here? Would it be you continuing to move this forward? Or would it be Joe or the both of you?
I envision an ongoing partnership unless Joe tells me otherwise.
Oh, no, we had agreed in our pregame, it would fall to me for the next steps. We're gonna work on fill in the blanks, but town clerk made a great suggestion. We do want to engage a lot of the department heads, not that there's any here, or committees that may have a presence, so that they're aware of what we're trying to do, because again, the intent of this is to protect anybody who's working for the best interest of the town of Harwich. So, me with an assist by the town clerk.
Thank you.
Great, thank you both.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Next is G, review financial audit, presented by CLA Consulting.
So, Madam Chair, if I could, obviously, if you've seen in the packet, we have not received the final the final version of what is still in draft form of the Clifton Larson Allen Consulting Firm's, you gotta go, pal, sorry.
He thinks we're exciting. He wants to stay.
Oh, you're not getting buy-in.
He really doesn't want to go. So funny.
Who knew? Policy wonk.
He's like,
There we go. So the analysis is nearly complete. However, one of the items that was not incorporated, the work that Barbara Bjornson's been doing, does not include the material that's in your packet, and that's information that was been collected and provided by our finance director. So we are scheduled, or we're trying to schedule a meeting with Barbara, Kathleen, and myself to finalize that. I have every expectation that you will be presented with the final report, which includes the materials that are in your packet tonight, for your board meeting on September 18th. But I didn't want to remove the topic. I didn't want the chance to pass without giving that update, but also if you allow questions under your agenda topic, the finance director could speak to it generally, or we can incorporate this, as I've said, into the final document.
Into the next. Anyone have any questions they want to ask now, or do you want to wait for the final presentation?
I'd like to
Michael?
ask one at least,
Go for it.
and Kathleen. And it's really related to revenue and expenses. FY '23 obviously is because we only have a partial, is that all from a partial year?
no, that is all of FY '23 revenue. We are still finalizing '23. There's always a chance an expense has not been recorded.
So going down to the,
Expect it to be too material.
so revenue less expenses minus 75%.
Yes.
What happened?
That's a 3-year change. If you look, so the percentage change revenue expenses from 20 to 23. Obviously with COVID, there was a great deal of fluctuations. It's not it's more a bell curve than a line. that being, 22 is an anomaly. And you hate to say it, but everybody was home. When no one out, and there was a great deal of actual trash, which is, I'm sure Lynn could speak much more to that, but based on just the review of the numbers, that's how it indicates, because 22 is not following the trend of the two bookmark years of 21 and 23. So, but unfortunately, the expenses, as you've noted, they've grown considerably, whereas the revenue has, 22 was considerably higher, say for like commercial fees. Everybody was home, everybody was doing it, but now that commercial expenses especially for renovations and buildings so expensive, it looks like there's a downward trend. Not being an expert, I wouldn't want to officially opine on that, but just based on the numbers. So,
Looking at what I think a lot of what started this was the conversations that we've been having about what we're charging.
Correct.
And then what we're paying to get rid of it. And everything that goes in the middle of that, and at least for me, I've said it's impossible that we're even breaking even on that, especially if you add in any of the indirect costs. So is that gonna be part of the report that we get? Is there gonna be that level conversation, or is it just gonna be an audit saying, here's everything we brought in and here's everything we spent, and thank you, have a nice day, with no change?
If I may,
Yes.
to the last point first, I definitely think there's going to be change. But I smiled when the phrase was made, just an audit. I always want to look in the direction of a finance director or an accountant. So what I was hoping to get out of the report that you'll see, I think we've gotten that, and you're correct. It started as an opportunity to analyze the operations, which to my knowledge had never been done to an in-depth level, given that there was a significant request for changes in fees. And so what you'll see is a comprehensive analysis of how the operation is run, but also with an eye towards if you, the board, were to recommend changes, and if I implemented those changes, what does that look like for transfer station disposal operations going forward? And I think to that you'll find there's quite a bit of depth and content there to answer those questions. Additionally, if I could, when Kathleen brought these documents to my attention, and I just want to make sure we're working off of the same sheets, I think the one that you both were just talking about is in your packet as Town of Harwich Transfer Station Revenue and Expense Analysis for fiscal year 2023, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So on that one, the first thing I noted is that the potential good news is that we hit our revenue expectation to the tune of 115,000 over if the numbers hold. So we were projecting 3.59 million, and we see revenue coming in at over 3.7 million. So that's the good news. We met and exceeded our revenue estimates, which is, is a little bit concerning when you have a rainy summer. So we see that trend as a positive. However, I would say that we have trended at our expense. To Kathleen's point, expenses may lag because we're not aware of all of them. You may be aware of past years where we've done bills in excess and things like that. So that's much closer to budget, but still potentially concerning going forward. And then last, what you have in there is a topic that we want to make sure Barbara incorporates, because I don't think she was generally aware of it, nor would it become readily apparent, is that accounts aging report. And that's something where Kathleen and I, if I may speak for both of us, we're very focused on making sure there's narrative that talks about what that process gets to. So I've seen parts of the draft. We were waiting on numbers, obviously, to come in for fiscal year 23, all three parties, meaning Barbara, Kathleen, and I agreed. We wanted it to capture full fiscal year 2023 because we had all those solid numbers to compare. And I think most importantly, given the task at hand of analyze the operations so you folks can make executive decisions, I think you'll have more than enough information to do that. And timing-wise, we may be in a position to affect those changes through the fiscal year 25 budget process.
Michael?
Last question, and I've asked it many times. Why are we doing $150,000 to $250,000 budget transfers at the end of every year? Given these numbers, it looks to me like we're doing fine, other than the expenses at this point. Why are we going through the exercise every year where we're having to do budget transfers in that amount of money? Sorry to put you on the spot because you weren't here last year.
No, of course.
Or the year before.
There could be a twofold. Now, not having, years of experience with the process. The issue sometimes with budgeting and municipal accounting as a whole is you have to adhere to a voted budget. Some towns have a transfer station that's an enterprise fund where the revenue and expenses have a closer correlation. When you have something like this, it's as a department and frankly, the landfill, the transfer component of what we're looking at is not the entire cost of that department. It is very difficult to parse out the exact cost of each truck trip and their, corresponding repairs. There were some assumptions made. We used more the mileage, reimbursement rate versus tracking what the fuel cost was every week over the course of the period.
Okay.
So there are some issues with that. The transfers per se, you can make the argument that they didn't, technically, if on paper, if you kind of parse it this way, lose money. But if the budget was set at a level that was voted on, based on the best estimates at that time, but it's still insufficient to cover all the expenses for that department, you have to true up that budget line so as not to exceed that and, have issues in that respect. So it's more allocation issues. It's not necessarily that they're wildly exceeding their expenses in that department.
And I only say that as we get into the next budget cycle.
Sure.
Depending on what we're looking
Yeah.
at. We seem to do it year after year after year.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, a lot of the public questions that.
Sure.
And it's not a great look for DPW,
Right.
even though they really are doing a great job.
And it may be more to the point that there wasn't as much information available at the time when the budget, was being set. Not being part of it, I don't want to speak to it. Certainly no poor reflection on anybody. Sometimes it's just, you just don't have the kind of information, at the time that you do now. Looking back, we can look back at, escalating fuel costs, truck repairs. There's a 18-month wait in some instances for, heavy equipment and trucks. So, and they're selling them over sticker even to municipalities. So those are costs that are very difficult to anticipate and forecast.
Thank you.
It's always fascinated me that we're one of the few that's open, 362 days a year. So one of the things I hoped to be able to look at with this, in addition to what Michael talks about the C&D that we take from everywhere, if we didn't have that and only took care of Harwich, could we be open 5 days a week? And you could debate what days those would be. Will we get to that level of specifics?
Generally, yes. And I say generally because, again, this operational analysis audit preceded Kathleen and was commissioned by me in the absence of a finance director because of the requests that were made to you folks about those operations. Given that, I gave Barbara direct instructions, if you will, to analyze the entire operation with an eye towards being able to make recommendations on fee schedule, which I think Kathleen may be able to do on the 18th or going forward, and also contemplate just those very questions. What if we were a Harwich-only transfer station? What if we were open more regular hours to peer communities? So that narrative is in there. And then if I could, to go back to what Board Member McCaskill was getting to, I've found myself, it's been very easy to commingle the concept of the DPW is a solvent operation that doesn't need any money. Well, that has been the case for the transfer station, and so disposal, AKA transfer, is what was analyzed. And I think the bulk of the requests that have been coming in have been for the rest of the public works budget. However, Jane and John Q. Citizen may think of only DPW as what they see at the disposal area, and vice versa. So I think going forward, we're going to be more mindful of, yes, there's an element of the overall department that the numbers are readily apparent. Let's find out where we are on the other side of the ledger, because what I don't think is going to survive this analysis is the notion that we, the town, cannot impact upon operational hours at the disposal area because we put the rest of the department, or the program, if you will, at risk. I don't think that's accurate, and I don't think that's going to be borne out. So I am, I don't want to say excited, but we have a trove of information coming. I am excited by the fact that I have my partner in government and our finance director, and she's been right there with the analysis and offering not only input, but also suggestions and commentary. So given that you'll hear me say this a lot, 245 days away, the timing couldn't be better.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you.
Julie?
One question just on the account aging report, if I can. I just noticed, there's at least 3 companies, I'm not gonna name the companies, but with some pretty high balances and 60 and 90 days. Is there a policy that, why are we
So
not having our bills?
The short answer is, we're not aware of any policy, and that is something that, if I may say, the Finance Division discovered separate and distinct from Barbara's work. That's why I want to make sure we incorporate that information into the analysis, because there shouldn't be that level of aged accounts. And if we, the town, have a practice, not a policy or procedure, but we have a practice of aging accounts, well, then we have a lot of explaining to do to Jane and John Q. Citizen, who aren't afforded the same opportunity. So that was not part of Barbara's analysis, to my knowledge. It was as Kathleen went through the numbers, she came across it. So I do think, as much as I would have loved to have been able to present it all tonight, that element should be incorporated in the final document.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy.
Jeff?
Yeah, we have a little bit, we'll have more updated information, as this is, as of June 30th, but it was just more to keep in with FY '23 as a whole.
Thank you.
I think Jeff just had one more
Yeah,
question.
when is that final draft going to land? Do we have
So
an-
the next step would be
Probably said
for-
that, but
That's all right, though. It's worth repeating, and it's important. Kathleen and I are working with Barbara on scheduling, and we want to make sure that Barbara has now had a chance to review Kathleen's material. I would think that Barbara would probably say her analysis was probably 90% complete. We were just waiting on fiscal year-end numbers. Now that we have those, we're going to add this. So I believe we're still on track for this to come before you between Kathleen, Barbara, and I presenting on September 18th.
fantastic.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Kathleen.
Take a motion on H, Jeff?
I move to approve the following special permits. One-day wine and malt permit, Rotary Club of Harwich / Dennis. Event to be held at Stonewood Products, 15 Great Western Road on Saturday, September 23rd, 2023, 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. A one-day entertainment and event permit at the Harwich Chamber of Commerce. Event to be held at Hinckley Home Center, Route 138 Route 137, on Saturday, September 23rd, 2023, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., recorded live music amplification, dancing outside. And last but not least, a one-day entertainment and event permit at the Harwich Chamber of Commerce Holiday Parade to begin at the Harwich Elementary parking lot, 263 South Street, and end at the Harwich Community Center, 100 Oak Street, on Sunday, December 3rd, 2023, 12 p.m. to 2 p.m., recorded live music amplification outside.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, Joe?
Thank you.
Old business, back to our work on committees. It was sort of at the end of the meeting, so I don't know that we went through some of the general thoughts as thoroughly as we might have. When I looked at it later, I think if you look at the overall questions, I think we concluded that the interview committee would continue to interview and appoint as to their best judgment. So if it's a committee that we're not sure of the status, you'd hold that, but those that we're sure of, that are regulatory, you would go ahead and make those appointments. Is that everyone's understanding where we
Yes.
left that? And I think we talked about the process for handling current committee members if we reduce seat numbers or combine committees. And I think we also concluded, Michael, that you and Don would work out a proposal on how we would handle that.
Yeah, and it was really more based on what board members come back with.
Right.
I know in Disability Rights Committee, they're having a heck of a time getting a quorum, and Larry Valentine, Selectman Valentine had upped that from 5 to 7, and there's still 6 active on the committee, but they cannot have a meeting. That's another one. I am not the liaison to that. I do have a relative on that committee, and it's extremely frustrating to the committee that they really don't have anything to do. But again, that's not my committee to work on, but I tried a couple weeks ago to get that dropped to 5, just as an interim step. And I'm gonna continue to try to see if there's somebody that just doesn't go to any meetings that can be removed or would resign, so that we could go to 5. So that maybe, while we figure out the committee, they could actually get a quorum and meet.
I believe we went from 5 to 7 at their request.
We did go from 5 to 7 at their request.
Okay, just,
Could we make one an alternate, so that they don't have to,
We have 2 alternates.
could we make 2 people an alternate, so that we could have 5?
We would have to have 3 alternates.
All right, I'm done. Thank you, Mike.
So, but again, it comes back to, I know there's a department head involved in this a little bit, because there is a list of things that we know where we're deficient on handicap signage and things that are needed in buildings. They've asked for that list. I think they've changed chairs, maybe, I'm not sure, but they claim they have not gotten the list. And even if they get the list, the committee's not gonna go hang all the signs and make the improvements to the building. So I don't see personally, at this point in talking to 2 members of that committee, the chair and one other, that we really need that committee right now. Unless we really change the charge and give them something to do.
who's the liaison?
I think it's Selectman Howell.
Oh, okay,
I don't have it in front of me.
okay. Well, none of us jumped up, so I'm guessing it's done.
And
Joe?
I stepped out for a moment. Are we talking about accessible rights?
Yes.
Accessibility rights, yes.
Thank you. So the other point would be, the town is required to have an Americans with Disability Act, ADA, coordinator. It is Megan Eldridge, and that was a request of hers. So we meet that requirement. To Board Member McCaskill's point, committee members should not be installing any apparatus anywhere, and, staff would do all of that anyway, if that helps in any way. Meaning, if you disbanded this or it was inactive, the town is still in compliance with our state and federal requirements.
Well,
Okay.
I was gonna start by saying, I don't want my comments to be construed by others as trying to end committees, but I know they will be, probably in about a half an hour. But with that said, I don't like wasting people's time, and I don't like when people waste my time. And if there's a charge that makes sense to them and they're doing the work and they want to be on it, great. The chair in another interview with us, expressed her frustration and said she would no longer be chair because there's really nothing to do and people don't show up. So it's one that hopefully Selectman Howell will get on, and I'll try and stay out of his way.
That would be good. I think Selectman Howell would appreciate that.
He's not here, so.
He's not here, but we'll apprise him of this conversation and let him go. The third one under that ties right into that discussion. I've had this discussion with Ellen and Emily and Jen. I don't understand, unless it's required by regulatory, why we have alternates. All that does is confuse people as to whether they can vote or not, and I would just as soon get rid of the position alternate. We can talk about the people separately.
Do you want
So
to start?
that's my,
Well,
Joe, did you want to?
you go ahead.
He had the look of he's
Well,
got something key to tell
And I
us.
asked the town clerk if she wouldn't mind yielding. She agreed. Because it's very rare when we can sort of tie topics together. In a moment, we're going to go over the bylaw analysis of the municipal law unit. In doing my research in relation to the town clerk and the folks that are working on the committee analysis, I pulled some of the municipal law unit comments, which are very informative and instructive and really a nudge from the state that will allow this, but you should check this out. And they made reference to the time that we amended the charter to add alternates. What I don't think was ever brought to the commentary was the municipal law unit cautioned the town that if we're going to have alternates, we establish a process or a policy by which they would be incorporated into decision-making. And I think where the AG's office, the Attorney General's office was coming from on this is any of you that have served on regulatory boards, a regulatory board alternate is a real thing whereby if the chair invokes that, they have a standard of care, so to speak, that they're bound to. We should contemplate the same thing if we're going to use alternates and non-regulatory, but it begs the question, should we have alternates on non-regulatory? I have no opinion on that right now. But as you'll hear when we talk about the municipal law analysis of zoning and general bylaws, we missed an opportunity to have a conversation 7 years ago about, okay, you've expanded the use of alternates, but you should take this next step. So I bring that up because we should still take that next step. Unless and until there are no alternates for any other boards, there should be an active dialogue on what is the standard. How can a person go from being an alternate who sat in on all the meetings and then can stand in place of, which is the true purpose of an alternate, as you folks that have been on regulatory boards know. So, again, I jumped at it because we have conversation and dialogue from the municipal law unit coming up, and we had it 7 years ago, and we ought to be mindful of that and act on those things.
Okay, anyone else? Michael?
I always saw it as a training ground for people that want to be on a committee to be able to learn. I guess they could be a participant in the audience as well and learn. So I don't have any feeling on it other than regulatory boards. I know I sent you the other day the request again, not again to you. First was me and Joe. Board of Health desperately wants to add a couple alternates to their regulatory board. And I do believe there was some language that maybe we couldn't do it, but I did send that to you for an agenda topic. I don't want to go astray tonight on that, given the hour.
Yeah.
But they have requested it again.
Okay.
So,
My understanding on that issue, because I think it's on my list of potential topics for town meeting, 245 days. That body has references in both charter and bylaw. So there's a concern that we can do it, but it's going to require an action of town meeting. It's not something that the board can just do based on the current language.
Okay.
and for that, I know they've had some issues with quorums lately as well. And the Board of Health is an extremely important board that our public counts on. And when they post a meeting, to not be able to have the meeting with the topics that they're taking up is really detrimental to the public. And I think it's something that makes sense to me that we do that.
Okay, and I gather you've got that.
Correct.
Okay. Did you want to speak? You have to come a little closer.
Okay, Sharon Fleer, I am the chair of the Board of Health, so I'm not speaking for them per se. We did bring this up well over a year ago, and we did, at that time Katie was the chairperson, and she did reach out, I couldn't tell you to who, but I think you do have a letter regarding that yes, an alternate is acceptable. The question was when they can or cannot vote. And that was, I thought, sent back to either the board or to you as to whether you have to check whether it's legal or where you check to find out how or if they can vote. And it is important in the Board of Health because we occasionally have where we're down people, and we sometimes don't have the quorum to take the meeting through. And if we had that alternate, there are times when it would be really advantageous. But we need to find out when they can vote and under what circumstances.
So if I could, that gets back to the issue I've talked about from 2016. And the argument or the discussion wouldn't be whether an alternate is allowed. There's ample state law or case law that talks about a Board of Health because it's quasi-regulatory. But there are disconnects between the case law and what our charter and bylaw state. And that's what has to be corrected. And to the point of when a member of the Board of Health is going to be elevated from alternate to acting member, voting active member, is something that has to be addressed generally by policy, if not by bylaw.
All right, and then that brings up, because I think that's exactly what came up before, but nothing has been followed through with that. And I had requested that at last year's, whatever you call it, when the chairperson stands and, gives you what we did all year and then any requests we have. And as far as I know, last, and I did check with Katie, nothing more has happened with that. As far as the voting, and this is just my thought on this, when you look at the legal system, and this is different, and they have alternates, they sit in at all the meetings. If they don't have the quorum that's there, then that person, and in that particular meeting, can fulfill that empty space. That's what we're going to be looking for if it's possible. That's what we run into occasionally when people don't show up for the meeting.
And I believe that's the core of what the Attorney General's office was getting to. The town needs to develop a system by how,
All right.
typically the chair, and in what instances. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds tonight, but anyone that's been on a regulatory board, you know that there's the Mullen Rule, there's the law of necessity, all of those things where if we're going to elevate somebody from alternate to acting member, there are other steps that need to take place that they have to affirm, I think, with the clerk's office, so that when a decision's rendered, if there's an appeal, we can demonstrate that we've complied. So I think it's all part and parcel of what we're talking about. And as I said before, I would like us to revisit that advice and direction from the Attorney General's office, see direction from council. If the membership's already there, it seems to be from the AG's memo, and again, this was just on a prospective charter change, that we can handle that, we, the town, can handle that administratively through executive board.
Without having to wait for a bylaw
If
or an
certain
annual
conditions
meeting?
exist, correct.
Okay.
All right, my one other quick question then is, going forward, when you're talking about the bylaw and the charter, how is that, who's going to initiate getting it there?
So, right, so for me, it's one of the topics that's on my list of articles to talk about over the coming months, and the board would decide if there's going to be an article, whether it's bylaw amendment or charter amendment.
All right,
Because it has to go through town meeting at that point.
right, I remember you saying that, it's just, it hasn't come up, other than what Katie had sent the letter.
Right.
And at this point, it hasn't gone anywhere, so I was just, since it came up, I thought, that was a good time to ask.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Julie?
I was just going to point out the fact that obviously That's the point, is we need to clean it up, but with ZBA, for example, you have to be at so many hearings in order to be a voter. So you can't just have an alternate jump in.
Right.
Okay.
Mary, if
Yes.
if we could at least get a sequence of events that have to happen for the Board of Health in a reasonable amount of time, so that we can just answer the question and say, here's the roadmap on how we're gonna get there.
Yeah.
Because I know we change health directors and other things, but it'd be great to give them here's how this will work and when.
And Joe, you indicated that some of that could be done separate from town meeting and bylaw change,
Correct.
charter change.
So when I say if
So-
certain conditions
Yeah.
exist, I don't know off the top of my head
Yeah.
what the language is specifically for Board of Health in the charter, as well as in the bylaw, because that's one of the major problems. You usually talk about it in one or the other, not both.
Yeah.
So when you have it appearing in both, chances are you have to amend both. So if that's not the case, then the next step would be developing the process or Board of Health policy through the executive board of, and alternates shall be exercised in the following manner.
Okay,
That is something that, if all the other conditions exist, I believe the board can do.
we can do. How quickly can we do that?
You could theoretically do it as quickly as your meeting on September 18th.
Okay,
If nothing else, I think as we talk about committees, talk about the next item with MLU, we should at least bring that up and have that conversation about alternates generally.
okay,
So there's no reason why you couldn't further this discussion at your next meeting.
thank you.
Mary, just to go back
Yes.
to Don's committee, we, Don and I, in the interview, have said to people that we're interviewing, we might be reducing the membership of this committee, so we're not gonna put you forward right now.
Yeah,
And then in 2 instances, we've interviewed people that are interested in committee, new faces, enthusiasm. We've been able to turn them from the committee they applied to something else that they might be interested in.
great.
So we're actively working on that, and, I spoke against the disability going up too, but at the time, we had 9 people interested. We don't anymore, so we gotta be cautious about raising,
Yeah.
because we have extra people that are interested right now, because they can spectate and participate in the meeting from the audience.
Right, okay. I think that's everything that was left over on the general discussion, unless anybody else had anything. I think next is any committee updates. I know you have one, Michael, in the Agricultural Commission. Do you want to do that one?
I can, and it will be my recommendation and hopefully a motion to make the Agricultural Commission inactive, and let the couple that are left on it know that it is an inactive committee at this point. With that said, they're inactive, they're not meeting, they haven't had a meeting to put a new chair in place. I don't think that they even have a quorum. I've spoken to Board of Health, Animal Control Officer, Conservation Commission, anyone that I could think that the Agricultural Commission could help. And consensus was the same. Board of Health said that they were helpful when they went through the piggery conversation. There is nothing on the table right now whatsoever. I've also talked to past and present members of the committee, and they agree there's nothing for them to do. I've spoken to local farmers, but I literally took a day and called everybody. And the consensus was there's nothing to do, and that you should make the committee inactive.
Okay, do you want to make a motion?
I move that we make the Agricultural Commission inactive.
Second.
Any discussion from other members?
My only other discussion would be, if we need them again, we'll put it out there that we need committee members for agriculture if a project
Right.
comes up. There's several farmers in this town that have said that they would be happy to help in anything that comes up and offer their advice. I'm sure that the 2 members that are still on the committee would be interested in coming back. So by no means am I trying to take anything away, but everybody agreed that there's nothing for them to do right now.
And
Okay, Julie?
just to follow up on that, back in, I don't know, a couple, 3-4 years ago when they wanted to come back, they never really came back. They tried, and it just never really went forward with any kind of regular meetings. Different issues with trying to have a joint meeting with health and stuff, so they're just not functioning. So to Michael's point, if they want to come back, fine, but they need to
Okay.
be intact.
If I
Jeff?
may,
Yep.
I'm just going to say thank you for doing the legwork, because with something like this, where we're going to, make a committee inactive or remove a committee, the legwork has to be there.
Right.
And you clearly did that, so I'm in support.
Okay.
Well, there's nobody here with pitchforks. I do remember a couple of years ago when the Trails Committee and that idea and bikeways came up, there were people here with pitchforks, or pickaxes maybe.
It's not
Not sure.
911, right? We had the lesson on that earlier, 911.
Motion in a second.
Yes. Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0, Joe. They are inactive. Annual committee meetings. Ellen pointed out to me that this is the time that each of the committees comes forward and gives us a report. And it's, I believe it's in the charter that they're to meet with us once a year. So the question is, do we want to start scheduling them 5 at a whack and get through them? I believe there was a move last year, and I want to make sure we're on solid ground. We just had written reports. I don't think they all came and talked to us. What's the pleasure of the board?
I believe they did, there were several that didn't come.
Yeah.
And we went to written because of the pandemic.
Okay,
We always did 5 out of whack. And there was questions that we had come up with that each one had to answer a certain amount of questions when they came in. I'm not sure if it says that they have to physically meet with us. Do you know, Emily?
I think it does.
Okay. Okay,
May I?
yeah. Joe?
Sorry, thank you both. And with a nod to my colleague Ellen Powell, she's also heard my commentary. So I'm just going through the charter now. And I believe when I find Chapter 7, the reference is that the committee should interact with the board
Ooh,
on an annual basis.
interact.
So it's, I think the practice evolved into we're going to do formal annual meetings. But to meet the requirements of the charter would be,
The tension is mounting in the room.
so it is Chapter 7, Section 2, Clause number 3. All town agencies, and we understand agencies to be committees, all town agencies shall meet with the Board of Selectmen at least once in each year. So you meet with Capital Outlay, Finance Committee, you've had joint meetings. Those are events that would meet the criteria.
Okay,
And if you didn't have others that regularly came before you, you could schedule a joint meeting for such a purpose. But my understanding of this section of the charter is that it does not require an annual meeting or an annual report at this time of year. The reference to the annual report is what we put in the annual report. So I think there's been some confusion on that. However, I think the town would be very well protected that you're not violating your own charter if you meet with a committee during the course of the year and chalk that up to the requirements of 732.
okay.
Sorry, 723.
And then just schedule meetings with the ones that have not had,
There's nothing that ever prevents the select board from meeting with any committee,
Yep.
and certainly committees that you haven't interacted with over the course of a year.
and it doesn't sound like there's any time requirement for that
Correct, it says
during the year. right?
at least once in each year.
Okay, so why couldn't we do that when each one of us is reporting out on our committee, have them come to that? We will have had discussions with them, and the staff, and then the committee, and have them here with the pitchforks.
I think that's a great idea. And I would, further, because we're doing the committee reviews.
Right,
One of the questions was, do you understand your charge?
right.
And it was always yes. And there's one particular committee that I won't mention, that they gave us the report. It was a great report. And then at the end of it, it was future goals, right? That was the last one. And they had 4 things on there that had nothing to do with their charge whatsoever. So do you understand your charge? Yes. And then it was, we're going off on this, and we're gonna do these, and which is why I think for us, as we start looking at charges, that they really understand what the charge is.
Okay. All right, then let's do that. We'll bring the committee in the night that we're going to talk about that committee.
Absolutely.
It's kind of a natural. I think that's it on those topics. Notice of subsidy via the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund.
So a little bit of a theme going on here when the town receives notice of certain messages, such as this one and the next one you'll talk about. I thought it important to present it to the board, and I think you folks thought enough to put it on the agenda. So first, this is great news, that the town of Harwich was awarded the subsidies that we requested, both related to the intended use plans as it relates to Route 28 sewer construction project and the Phase 3 sewer extension. And so it's a great thing to bring up tonight. It's a great thing to have available when you have your working group session next week with the water wastewater commissioners. And it just shows, from my perspective, that the Water Protection Fund is working with the funds they have available, and we hope that they can remain robust, healthy, and solvent as they go forward. But it is great news to hear that we were awarded those 2 subsidies.
And what, 14 million, something like that?
Altogether, it's just under 13 million
13.
For the subsidies, but again, the total projects are 49 million.
Yeah,
But still solid amounts.
right. Thank you, Joe.
If I may,
Yes.
Route 28 sewer construction project, $2,024,897, and then Phase 3 sewer extension, $10,475,000. Great money.
Yeah, fabulous. Okay, next is Attorney General review of general and zoning bylaw amendments. I asked Emily if she would come to talk about this because she is fluent in Attorney General speakese.
I'm mixing up my microphone placement this time so I can spread out. Emily Mitchell, still town clerk. All right, so I did want to come give you the updates on the status of the various bylaw amendments that passed at the 2023 annual town meeting. So that included 3 general bylaw amendments and 3 zoning bylaw amendments. The general bylaw amendments were Articles 36, 55, and 56, better known as changes to the water bylaw and the new balloon-related restrictions and plastic reduction restrictions. And the 3 zoning bylaws were the ones relating to accessory dwelling units, the floodplain regulations, and the solar photovoltaic arrays, Articles 37, 38, and 39. So what happens after bylaws are favorably voted at town meeting is that the town clerk's office submits them to the Attorney General's office municipal law unit for review. And their review process essentially involves reviewing what the town voted and making a determination as to whether those votes are consistent with state law. So you'll see the formal letter from the Attorney General's office is in your packet, along with the votes of those 6 articles, I believe. And all 6 were approved by the Attorney General's office, which is great news. The next step, now that we've received that approval, is to go through certain notice processes so that we can inform the public about these favorably voted and approved amendments. So we had our constable posting to the physical locations in town last Monday, I believe August 28th, and a legal ad confirming those physical postings will be in the Cape Cod Chronicle in this week's edition for September 7th and next week, September 14th. Once those notice requirements have been satisfied, we'll be looking at bylaws going into effect. So general bylaws go into effect under state law upon approval, or if there is an effective date in the bylaw. So for our water bylaw, I don't believe there's any special effective date indicated, but both the balloon and plastic reduction bylaws have specified effective dates in the language. And then zoning bylaws under state law are actually backdated in their effectiveness. So once they are approved and go through the notice requirements, they're considered backdated to the date they were approved at town meeting. So that's all the good news. I did then want to, and I can stop there if anyone has questions on that part.
That's it, we don't want to hear anymore.
All right, I'll jump in. So you'll notice that the Attorney General did provide sort of a lengthy letter focused on the 3 zoning bylaws that were amended and approved. And I think Joe made the point referencing an earlier decision about alternates, that typically when the Attorney General responds to bylaw amendments, they limit their analysis and response to this is approved and does not conflict with state law. Thank you. In this case, you'll notice they added a lot more exposition and they made some recommendations to you. So the one that stood out most to me is Article 37, which is about the accessory dwelling units, and they did approve the amendment, but they did, in reviewing the amendment, look at the other language in the bylaw and flag some areas for concern. I won't pretend to be an expert on zoning or accessory dwelling units, but my takeaway from their analysis was there may be language in our bylaws, not the section they reviewed, but otherwise in our bylaws, that may be in conflict with other state or federal requirements. And they did include a recommendation to have town council review those sections. And I would imagine a review might lead to future zoning amendments to go before town meeting. So I wanted to make sure you all had the time to read and review this and consider any action you might want to take in terms of referring to council or contemplating future amendments if there are those areas of conflict.
From having read it a dozen times, I got to the point that I think what they're saying is by using the words 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms, whatever it is, 2 bedrooms, we are discriminating against families. And my thought was maybe we have to take that out and just say, limit the bedrooms based upon the Board of Health septic requirements. I don't know, that was just me trying to guess. Michael?
I stopped at 1.5 times. I said this is a great question for KP Law. So
Yeah.
I would support this going to KP Law for a written in English memo back to us with what we need to do.
That would be great.
So,
Julie?
I agree with that, and I certainly welcome that analysis, but I think the other point of this is an ADU is supposed to be a subordinate dwelling to the main house. And so what we were trying to say there is you couldn't exceed, and we had 900 square feet and 2 bedrooms, and we went up to 1,000. I've seen other towns in their zoning bylaws have similar language that, unless they're getting pushback from the AG, because ultimately it's supposed to be either rent the house and and live in the ADU or vice versa. So I don't really know how they're making that argument, but I understand it, but I think we need the lawyers. But that's the reason it's in there.
Yeah. Joe?
My 2 cents would be, having read these over time, the Attorney General's office is not shy about using the phrase, "this may not survive challenge." So they didn't indicate that in this case, and I think Board Member McCaskill's spot on. What they're saying is, you gave us this thing to look at, and we did, but we're aware of your whole thing. So timing being what it is, this is the ideal time to get that English translation and ask council directly. And I think in this case, it would be Amy Questle directly.
Yeah.
What action, if any, do you think we should contemplate? And then it goes through our process.
Okay.
So for me, if they thought there was a legal challenge looming, they've never been shy about suggesting that. But what they are saying is that in the future, there could be some claim against the town. So that's why I think it's great to go through this exercise, and I want to just put out there administratively. When I made reference to the 2016 report, the process back then was the select board and town council, along with the town clerk, were notified. They've now changed it where it goes to the town clerk and town council only. So it's a great compliment, or it's a great thing that should be complimented of our town clerk, that she took the initiative to share it with you folks, especially given the commentary that's there. This is a great working relationship that's going to help the town go forward. because of that sharing. That was my take on that one in particular, that we have the time to evaluate the legal opinion and if necessary, take action.
Okay, so one of you will get that to KP Law?
So I figure anytime it's the legal stuff, I can certainly take that
Okay,
and go from there.
great, thank you.
Excellent.
Anything else, Emily?
That's it. I just wanted to share the good news and the things to keep an eye out for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
as our clerk goes away, first of all, expert analysis of all the requirements that go in it. The question would be, for the general bylaws, which had no commentary, we know that the sale, distribution, and use of balloons is effective September 15th, 2023. Is there anything in the posting requirements that would stall that date?
No, in fact, our requirements would be satisfied on the 14th, so we will make it just in time for the intended effective date.
So then what that means is the town is now on warning that as of September 15th, we have a prohibition on the sale, distribution, and use of balloons. Reason I ask is if the posting impacted upon that. The other one, however, the plastic reduction bylaw, is not set to go into effect until September 1st, 2024.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any obligation to let the businesses know, or is this our mechanism for letting the businesses know?
I think if this one, if I remember correctly,
Michael's gonna go everywhere else.
I thought there was a reference to the town or the town administrator. In any event, I think we would start working through our various departments to make everyone aware of it.
Okay,
I think the
Thank you.
businesses will know too when people start going to dentists to get their takeout and Chatham to get their balloons.
that one's a year out. The balloons are next week.
Do we have a chapter
No
number?
balloon.
Do we have a chapter number?
Sorry.
Is he gonna buy all the
He's gonna buy
balloons?
one of those helium balloons.
I have one.
Big tank.
Thank you. Specifically, this one makes reference to, this bylaw may be enforced by any town of Harwich police officer or other designee/agent authorized by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. I'm pretty confident the chief has better things to do than chase balloons, but
We can put that on a future agenda. We can get the balloon police.
let's move on to contracts.
Yeah.
Joe, you got a couple for us?
Certainly do, if I could just catch up for a moment.
Yep.
Actually, there is some quick narrative, but the narrative is because there's some good news. First, as it relates to the Brooks Free Library, or item A under your contracts, you can see from the memos there that when we first went to bid, the marketplace was so out of whack that we did not have enough money. We then went back to town meeting, got more money, went back out to bid, and the marketplace is changing where this one came in under bid, which is great. So very excited about that one and certainly recommend adoption. And then I'll just say very quickly, item B is, this is a testament to the great work of Sean Libby, because it's not often that you're being asked to sign a change order that results in a credit.
Yeah.
And that credit is because of his direction given to the contractor that we're not going that way, we're going another way. And so, two great contracts.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Now your report.
So I do need motions and
Oh.
votes.
I would move that we approve the contract with JJS Universal Construction Company in the amount of $120,000 for the replacement of the Brooks Free Library roof.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 4-0, Joe?
Thank you.
I move that we approve the contract change order for the Brooks Academy Museum basement renovation project with Campbell Construction Group LLC to deduct $10,991 from the original $189,000 contract.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. 4-0, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching me on that.
That's okay. It's getting late.
Now you're up, Joe.
All right. First, I will announce the appointment of Mr. Randy Ellis, who is the custodian who will be assigned to the Harwich Community Center. If memory serves correctly, this is a position that was funded at our last town meeting and is a dedicated resource at the community center. Am I saying that right? Yes. Okay, all right, so I got that one right. Randy will be joining us once all his paperwork is in effect tomorrow.
Great.
Next is a contract with R.J. Gabriel Construction Company. This is a contract that I executed. It is relative to the Sand Pond Recreation Area. You may recall that that project requires the installation of a septic system. And so we went to do rebids. The bids came back in with a range of $37,700 to $79,000. So the contract there is awarded to R.J. Gabriel Construction Company for the amount of $37,700. And I believe that septic installation is the last major part of that project at Sand Pond. We have a contract now with a vendor that's very critical to our town clerk. The town has contracted with LHS Associates for vote tabulation machines, specifically the purchase of 6 voting tabulators. This was a straight process through Chapter 30B. They were the most responsive and responsible bidder, also offering the lowest price for $26,960. This price includes the trade-in of our existing tabulators, so it's a nice swap. And I would dare ask that our clerk should have this in place for our federal elections. So that's a critical thing for our town clerk. The new systems will be in place for our federal elections starting in the spring of '24. So great to have that contract done. Tip of the hat to Jim Mullen when he was here, who also secured some funding for us, I think. So we thank Jim for that work. And last but not least is a contract extension for Richard Mandel Golf Architecture. As you may recall, there was an original contract in the amount of $40,000, which had expired. However, our golf director, Roman Greer, and golf superintendent, Sean Fernandez, are still working on that project and need additional time. So we did an extension of the contract, and if memory serves correctly, what we're really doing here is extending the time, not the dollar amount. So we are now extending it through the end of this fiscal year, so June 30th, 2024.
Great, thank you.
And other than that, I just want to congratulate everyone that went back to school. I'm very happy when back to school comes back. I think that's a parent thing. And then last but not least, I made reference earlier, I have been working with staff and have obviously started tracking the time for town meeting. I don't know why I keep looking at you, Julie, but, we're now in that mode. So what I'd like to be able to present at your next meeting is potentially a financial 5-year outlook ahead of schedule, as well as the comprehensive plan, the Gantt chart that will get us from this moment through town meeting, and start the discussion on warrant articles and all of that fun stuff.
Great.
So thank you. That concludes my report.
Okay, Selectmen's report. Julie?
I don't really have anything. I just want to thank Cindy, Carolyn, Ginny's not here, and the gentleman from the Cranberry Festival for the amount of things you introduced that are going on in town. It's just remarkable, so thank you for all your hard work.
Jeff?
I'd just like to say thank you to Monomoy School System. My son got picked up at the bus stop today and returned. My little 7-year-old, he actually came home, and Brooks had the biggest smile on his face when he got off the bus and said it was his best first day of school ever.
Oh.
And he's had so many, too. But thank you to Monomoy School System for making the first day of school happen.
Great. Michael?
Just to mention the sale of the lot on Queen Anne Road,
Yes.
$1.5 million. And thank Bill Marsh from Eastwood Companies. What a great bid. And Nick Mitchell, another great bid for $1.33 million. So that was pretty amazing. Nobody
Yeah.
thought we were going to get that. I would like to get maybe on the next agenda where that money goes. I've been asked. I know it goes into a sinking fund.
That
I
doesn't
think it
sound
goes into a
good.
sinking fund.
I don't believe the sinking fund is going to relate to that property because there's no outstanding debt.
Because it's not on the agenda, I'd say next meeting's fine.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
we did have one bid that I'm hoping we could have an executive session on the Baptist Church at our next meeting, a brief one to go over it with recommendations if possible. But I know we have one bid on that, and people are anxiously awaiting either getting started or if we're not accepting. So
Okay,
I'd love to see
We can do that.
conversation
Yep.
start at least.
okay.
Other than that, nothing.
And the only thing I have is I was invited today by Bruce Young to go on a tour of the fire station on Bank Street, and what a great project that is. It's a threefer. You've got the museum, you've got the environment, and the 3 apartments that are they're going to be much larger than I envisioned just looking at the shell of the building. Their next step is getting some money. They said with money, they could have those apartments ready in, I forget what they said, 5 or 6 months. I mean, they are ready to go. So I promised to help a little bit with the money from my grant background. So anyone who's looking to make a donation, donations are gratefully accepted. Thank you. That's all I have. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4-0. That's a wrap.